Hey, everybody, and welcome back to. So, as for most of you who don't know, 50's ancestors actually were part of the band that went down with the Titanic.
Mana.
Dude. That got me so much. I actually put up the pen first thing again.
I aim to please.
And welcome to another edition of Fun with Flags. I am none other than your friendly neighborhood soda, joined as always by, whether he's near or whether he's far, he's always there wherever you are. 50 Shades of Geek, man. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Just trying to recover from that fall.
Yeah, I was in a play right before COVID, and I had to do a pratfall, and I fell behind the couch. But the way I did it, it was basically I just fell. I didn't protect myself, and it was on hard concrete. I had a sore hip for a couple of days. Yeah, hiding from the cops.
I'm crazy, but my philosophy is the script calls you for you to fall, you fall.
Why does it keep doing that?
Try to see if maybe you're accidentally pressing the enter button by accident.
Because I'm trying to move my keyboard. But anyways, because I don't need it for this episode.
It's either the enter button or the space key. So,
that might have been it.
Because it always just defaults to the last thing you clicked on.
Oh, well, okay, well, I just hit them both, but it didn't work. Anywho, that is not why we're here. We are here to talk about something that is important to us from either of our countries. Today, it's my turn. And we're actually kind of fortunate because this week kind of coincided very well with my topic. So for those who don't know, we re-record the show. Today is April 16th. Now, we are 2 days removed from the 111th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Now, clearly, everybody knows the story of the Titanic. It was a ship on its maiden voyage to New York. It collided with an iceberg, and in the span of about 2.5 hours, or the equivalent of the actual film time of the sinking in the movie. Yes, it is the actual time it took to sink the Titanic. It sank into the bottom of the ocean. There was over 2,000 lives lost on that. It's considered one of the greatest maritime disasters, and it is what the doctor would call a fixed point in time, because this moment changed so much in terms of maritime laws. This is a significant point in history, just unfortunately for the wrong reasons. How familiar are you with the story of the Titanic? Because obviously over here, pop culture and all that shit. I don't know what the knowledge of it's like in Israel. Like, is it fairly common knowledge?
Obviously it's the thing that happened that everyone knows and everyone talks about, and obviously there's the movie. So, it's a well-known thing, but we don't really know a lot of the details and the specifics like you do for some reason.
Yeah, because I saw the movie, and it got me interested in learning more about the ship. So I pretty much read every book in my Terrace Public Library here on the subject. Like I delved deep in my teens. And then I came across this story, which is interesting because what many people don't know is Canada actually plays a very significant part in the aftermath of the Titanic sinking. Basically, Halifax, because it was closest to where the Titanic sank, or where they assumed they had sunk, they had actually dispatched a Canadian freighter to go collect the bodies. Halifax, Nova Scotia, is the largest Titanic grave site in the world, because unfortunately, a lot of the people that were reclaimed, their bodies weren't claimed, so they had to bury them somewhere, and so they're buried all in Halifax. So as we all know, at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912, the RMS Titanic hit an iceberg about 375 miles off the coast of Newfoundland. The first ship to reach the scene of the disaster, the RMS Carpathia, arrived at about 3:30 a.m. About half an hour of searching in the dark, a crew member spotted a flare of one of the surviving lifeboats, and the rescue mission commenced. By 8:30 a.m., all survivors, 705 women, men, and children, were brought up from the lifeboats, and the Carpathia steamed for New York. Now the task became recovery of the dead. Halifax, the capital of Nova Scotia, was the closest major port to the site of the disaster. A Halifax-based cable ship, the CS Mackay Bennet, was quickly fitted out as a quote-unquote moored ship and dispatched to where the Titanic had sunk 2 days earlier, more than 800 statute miles away. Mackay Bennet carried all the embalming fluid available in Halifax, approximately 100 wooden coffins, 100 tons of ice, and 12 tons of iron bars to weigh down bodies to be buried at sea. But it wouldn't be enough to cope with the large number of bodies. So any questions so far?
No, not really.
So this is the steamship. This is the Mackay Bennet.
Okay.
Basically, it was
How big is this ship?
It's not big. It's
Yeah, it looks that way.
It's no bigger than a fishing boat. Basically.
But how were they planning on shipping all the bodies on that small of a ship?
Spoilers.
Oh, okay.
Well,
fuck me then.
So now the ship, named of two founders of the commercial cable company, John W. Mackay and James G. Bennett, was launched in 1884. Based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where she first arrived in March 1885, she was also often used for operations on the European side of the Atlantic, based out of Plymouth, England. In addition to carrying out numerous difficult cable repairs, many during times of wartime danger due to the nature of her work and resultant position in the Atlantic, Mackay Bennet performed many rescues similar to this. Yeah. So in April 1912, she was berthed in Halifax during a period of long-term work maintaining the France to Canada communications cable. Of the three ships in Halifax at that time, only Mackay Bennet had a hold capable of holding 125 coffins and ice, forming part of the exercise of recovering the bodies. The ship became notable as the main vessel contracted by White Star Line to carry out the difficult task of recovering the bodies left floating in the North Atlantic after the Titanic disaster. The task was further motivated by John Astor's announcement. John Astor is the son of one of the passengers who passed away on the Titanic. Spoilers, John Jacob Astor, his body was found. The task was further motivated by John Astor's announcement of a $100,000 reward for the ship recovering the body of his father, John J. Astor, who, like I said, was discovered. They found his body. So the captain, Frederick H. Lardner, took on board a combination of specialist and effective mobile mortuary. Both additional and specialized personnel and supplies were taken on board for the assignment, including Canon Kenneth Cameron Hind of All Saints Cathedral, Halifax, to perform the last rites and for the burial at sea. John R. Snow Jr., the chief embalmer of the firm John Snow and Company, the province of Nova Scotia's largest undertaking firm, hired by White Star to oversee the embalming arrangements, to fishing and embalming supplies to handle 70 bodies, 100 coffins, 100 large tons of ice in which to store the bodies. Crew, thankfully, were pretty double for all this. So there was, unfortunately, as with most things back then, there was a hierarchy in terms of when it came to the details of what bodies they kept, what bodies they threw overboard. First class passengers were embalmed and placed in coffins. Second class passengers were wrapped in linen winding sheets, and third class passengers were weighed and buried at sea. 116 of them in total. Yeah.
Well, just like always, sucks to be poor.
Yep. And just to give you an idea, this here is a picture of one of the victims, unfortunately, getting embalmed. And this is also with they were performing last rites here. That's a bunch of the second class, a bunch of the bodies on the ship there. Yeah, it's pretty. It's interesting. The Mackay Bennet arrived on the evening of April 19th. By the following morning, the crew was ready to start recovering bodies. The captain found far more victims in the icy waters than he inspected. We saw them scattered over the surface, looking like a flock of seagulls, he later told the Washington Times. Boats with 5 or 6 crew and room for 8 bodies were lowered into the water to begin the recovery. On that first day, 51 victims were retrieved. Most were wearing life jackets and floating upright. Their heads and shoulders showed bruises from the chaotic sinking of the ship. The rescue mission had to pause at nightfall with the sea still dotted with bodies. The following day, April 21st, fewer were recovered, but 119 were hauled aboard on the ship the next day on April 22nd. Captain Lardner said that we found no 2 bodies together, all floating separately. No 2 were clasped in each other's arms. Yeah.
So the movie was a big lie.
No, because they didn't recover all the bodies.
I was making a joke.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. I can get to that later. So back to the other article. Chief Embalmer John R. Snow of Nova Scotia's largest undertakers took care of the bodies to be transported back to Halifax. Each one pulled from the water was given a number, and their personal effects were placed in a small canvas bag marked with the same number. After he ran out of embalming fluids and caskets, he began wrapping victims in canvas and placing them on ice in the hold, but they quickly filled the available space. Captain Lardner made a difficult decision to begin burying some of the victims at sea. Regulations required that only embalmed persons could be brought ashore. Most of the bodies to be buried at sea could be identified by the clothing as the Titanic's crew or third-class passengers. So as the Canadian government and associated burial and maritime laws directed that any bodies carried had to be embalmed before a ship to enter the Canadian port, the captain agreed to a system described as thus. First-class passengers were embalmed, placed in coffins, and stored in the rear cable locker. These included the bodies of John Jacob Astor, the richest man aboard. Body number 124, recovered on April 22nd, identified by his unique diamond finger ring and the initials sewn on the lapel of his jacket. Architect Edward Austin Kent, body number 258. And Isidore Strauss, owner of Macy's department store. Now, have you seen the movie? Okay. So in the movie, as the ship's sinking, there is a shot as the ship's sinking, and there's looking at all the passengers, like showing some of the passengers left on the ship that we've seen throughout the movie. And one of them is one of the scenes is an old couple who are in their bed in their cabin as the water's filling into the room. He's holding her, he's kissing her. It's going to be okay. That is actually based on true people. This gentleman, Isidore Strauss. They didn't die like they did in the movie. They actually were on deck chairs on the ship as it was going. They weren't in their bed. But basically, his wife had the opportunity to leave on the ship on the lifeboats because they were told women and children first, obviously. And she turned to her husband and she said, "Where you go, I go." And they died on the ship. They found his body. They never found hers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did they know that was her last words?
Because this was said in front of a bunch of people. Because they were literally, she was literally going onto the lifeboat and she said, "No, where I go, you go." So there's a lot of eyewitness accounts of that.
Of the survivors?
Yes, of survivors. And he's actually more famous. You've heard of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? Really? You've never seen that you never seen the episodes of Friends where underdog got away, or it's this big Thanksgiving tradition with like all these big balloons that they go down.
Oh, I've heard of that. I just didn't know that was the name of it.
Okay, so it's sponsored by Macy's department store. Macy's department store was founded by Isidore Strauss, one of the founders. So there you go. Second-class passengers were embalmed, wrapped in canvas, and stored in the cable locker. Third-class passengers were buried at sea, a total of 116 passengers. In October 2013, a photograph taken by Fourth Officer Westy Legate came up for auction, which, holy shit.
Oh, so you're learning new stuff as well.
No, I didn't realize that this picture is the one that's mentioned in the article.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this picture, I guess, came into light in 2013. Now this is fun. This next one is interesting because of the band aspect of it. The body of band leader Wallace Hartley, fully dressed with his music case strapped to his body, was transferred to another ship and returned to England, where he was buried in Lancashire. And this is the sad one. The body of 19-month-old Sydney Leslie Goodwin, known until 2008 only as the unknown child. A third-class passenger and the fourth body recovered was saved by the crew and stored in the hold. And because they couldn't identify that child, the crew took some of their wages and they paid for a proper burial for the child at the graveyard. And it wasn't until 2008, with the advent of online genealogy and stuff like that, that they actually were able to determine the identity of the child.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, no, and I remember reading articles and seeing videos, and the family's like, "Well, obviously we never knew, but I mean, it's kind of nice. Yeah, it was kind of a nice thing of closure."
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions so far?
What did you say then? The name of the guy was the chief embalmer.
Oh, Jesus, sorry, it's up here somewhere. Kenneth Cameron Hind. I've never heard of the designation Canon before.
I mean, I know Canon, the Canon.
Yeah, me too. It must be like an old term for priest or something like that, because I don't even recall ever reading that in the book I had. on this. I lent it to a friend and I still never got it back.
Yeah. Friends like these,
Yeah. Okay, so just after midnight on April 26th, the Mackay Bennet rendezvoused with the Anglo-American Telegraph Company's cable ship Minia to get extra embalming supplies before departing for Halifax at dawn that day. After a 7-day recovery operation, the CS Mackay Bennet had recovered 306 of the 328 bodies found from among the 1,517 who perished aboard the Titanic. They buried 116 at sea, of which only 56 were identified. And they set sail for home with 190 bodies on board, almost twice as many as there were coffins available. The crew split the $100,000 reward for John Jacob Astor's body, so about $2,500 each, and using some of that money, they paid for the burial of the body of the unknown child and his headstone monument. The casket was marked by a copper plaque reading, "Our Babe." The entire ship's crew, together with the majority of the population of Halifax, attended the child's burial at Fairview Lawn Cemetery on May 4th, 1912. With improved DNA testing, on July 30th, 2007, Canadian researchers at Lakehead University announced that testing of the body's mitochondrial DNA had revealed the child was 19-month-old Sidney Leslie Goodwin. Yeah. At the time of his death, Clifford Crease, who was one of the crew members on the board, his body was interred only a few steps away from the grave of Our Babe, a site he had visited on every anniversary of the tragedy during his lifetime. On April 23rd, another steamship, the Minia, arrived on the scene and delivered more embalming fluid, yada, yada, yada. 3 other ships were tasked with recovering victims of the Titanic sinking: the Minia, the CGS Montmagny, and the SS Algerine. The Minia found 17 bodies, 2 of which were crew members who were then buried at sea. The Montmagny recovered 4 bodies in May and buried one of them at sea. And the final victim, identified as saloon steward James McGrady, was found by the Algerine at the end of May. So basically, for almost 2 months, they were still finding bodies. In
how long did they say that they took them to recover bodies after 9/11?
That I don't remember, but it was a while. But the thing is with this, with the water currents, stuff like that, like I wouldn't be surprised if people were finding bodies.
I'm just asking for comparison's sake. That's all.
Oh no, totally. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't be surprised if people were still finding bodies in South America, something just never reported. In Halifax, so now the bodies have been recovered. So now they all have arrived in Halifax, where all were processed at a temporary morgue with the Mackay Bennet's victims. So basically, what they did is they took the giant curling rink and they turned it into basically the world's biggest funeral parlor.
Did it went back to being
oh yeah, it went back afterwards, of course. 59 bodies were eventually taken elsewhere for burial, and 150 were interred across 3 cemeteries in Halifax. 121 of the non-denominational Fairview Lawn Cemetery, and this is the Titanic graveyard here. It's the world's largest cemetery of Titanic victims. 19 at Mount Olivet Catholic Cemetery, and 10 at the Baron de Hirsch Jewish Cemetery. 43 remain unidentified, and their simple granite gravestones bear a number and the date of the disaster, April 15th, 1912. Yeah. Basically, this is something that more or less stayed with them throughout their lives. Like, there's an insert here where Clifford Crease, who was the gentleman who got buried near the body, he had kept a diary, and it's preserved in the Nova Scotia archives. And the account by the craftsman Tranlee is mostly factual, recording the weather and number of bodies found each day. On April 21st, he noted bodies in good state, but badly bruised by being knocked about in the water. His granddaughter told Global News in 2012 about Crease's shock after recovering the body of a child. He never fully recovered. He told our father it was the worst thing that ever happened to him, she recalled. Moved by the tragedy, the crew placed a blast plate there. So it took soon returned to its regular job carrying cable for maintenance work on the French-Canada cable link. The Mackay Bennet was retired from service in 1922 and finally scrapped in 1963. The name might be little remembered, but history preserves the Mackay Bennet's role in the Titanic's sad aftermath. Now, if they were ever to make another movie to do another Titanic, this is the story I would like to be told. I would like to be shown.
Yeah, I mean the story of the original Titanic movie was a very specific thing, focusing on two specific characters.
Right, and
But
a lot of people do say about that movie, it is the closest you'll get to ever being there.
yeah,
Like,
true.
like one of my favorite things to listen to is the historical commentary for the movie, and even the two guys on there who one of them foremost historian of the Titanic, and the other one his illustrations were used for a lot of the wide shots. They both said you was like being transported back 80 something years.
Yeah, but the like I said, the movie is specifically about those two characters. But think about how many people were on that ship. You can really tell thousands of stories of each.
100%. And that was when James Cameron was writing. He had the idea for the script. The thing that kept playing in his head was, if you were in a situation where you had 2.5 hours to live, how would you act out the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Titanic is, because of that movie, it's always been like a fascination of mine. I've always wanted to go to the museums. Just fortunately, where I'm located in Canada, I can't. If I wasn't claustrophobic as hell, and if I was rich, I would actually probably go down to the ship.
Wait, they're actually doing guided tours down to the ships?
Not really. Like, you can pay to go. Just you would have to be on board one of the research vessels.
Okay.
But no, basically, yeah, no. Well, in the movie, actually, funny enough, so at the very beginning of the movie, it's all taken underwater. It's all well, at that time, present day Titanic. Now, if you pay attention, in any shot where there's only one submersible, it's all miniature, right? They do it, right? If you see two of them in the same shot, that's the real footage of James Cameron going down the Titanic for the movie.
For research purposes.
Research purposes, yeah. And there have been documentaries on it and what have you. But yeah, you can pay, and well, I don't know if you can now, but there was a period of time about 15 years ago where you could pay to go down to the Titanic. So unfortunately, now it's because it's been over 100 years, and with the way bacteria, a lot of which we still don't know what it's like on the bottom of the ocean, the ship maybe has got another 20 years before it collapses in on itself, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, so it's another one of those historical sites on Earth that you got to visit before they're gone.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people consider, taking things up as grave robbing, and I get it. I really do. But on the flip side of that, it's like these things need to be preserved so we can learn from our history.
Yeah, always you got to learn from our history. Don't sweep it under the rug like some people like to
Right.
do.
And from that, part of me kind of wishes that they didn't trash the Mackay Bennet. Like, that is an important piece of Titanic history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a very sobering topic, but it's like I said, we're a couple days removed from the anniversary of the sinking. It kind of felt like it's something that needed to be put out there. I know it's not a long episode because there's not that much on it, but it's a story that I feel needed to be told.
As it should.
Yeah. All right. This is probably going to be our shortest episode we've ever done, actually.
It's record timing. I mean, how do we get to this? I mean, it's us. Like,
I know.
You get the two of us in the same room talking, we could go for hours.
To be honest, I think it's because of how dour the topic is.
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any final thoughts? Is any questions that about the ship itself, or I could answer a lot on
that. So, was that the only ship that recovered bodies, or were there?
I had done said this. That was the one that had recovered the most. There were a couple ships which I had said had recovered some more, but those ones they only recovered a couple here and there. So we had the Minia, which was the first of the other ships, and then you had the CGS Montmagny and the SS Algeron. The Minia found 17 bodies. The Algeron found the last body. They didn't find that many at all, unfortunately, because most of them at that point had either been recovered, they had already sank, or they had floated so far that they didn't know where they went.
And all the third class people that were buried at sea.
Yeah, and that's just the class system of the day. Like, I mean, these people weren't important to them, I should say.
Okay.
And they were important to somebody, but it's just like, in hindsight, it sucks because that's a lot of families that never got closure.
Yeah, and just like the doctor says, really, in all 900 years of time and space travel. I never met anyone who was not important.
And if I'm being honest, if the Doctor were real, one of the things I would like to see is I would like to see the sinking. I would like to see it for myself. A little more than I know.
From a safe distance.
Totally. It would be like when the Doctor and Amy are sitting at the beginning of the second episode in Matt Smith's first episode, where they're just sitting there looking out the door at space. It would be kind of something like that. I wouldn't be an active participant. Although knowing the Doctor, somehow we'd end up on the ship.
Because of course. But yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of the last couple of minutes in Power of the Doctor, where it was the Doctor and Yaz eating ice cream on the TARDIS roof, staring over the Earth.
Yeah, minus the ice cream part.
Yeah, it's cold. Too cold for ice cream over there.
Actually, if there was one thing I would do, I would take the architect of the ship, who was on there, Thomas Andrews, went down with the ship, and I would pull a Van Gogh with him.
Okay, that's cool. But I was just about to ask
him and the captain. Him and the captain are the two I would do it with.
I was just about to ask because, like, it sort of hit me. Would you really want to go back and see the sinking of the Titanic? Like, would you really want to see all these people jumping ship and dying horribly?
Okay, probably not all of that part. If anything, I would like to see the actual moment of sinking. Because while a lot of people have sorry, not of the sinking, the actual moment of the collision.
Okay.
I want to see how it happened, because obviously everybody's got their theories, and so that's one thing. Okay, that's what I'm more interested on. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to handle hearing all those screams.
Yeah, because there's famously in the fires of Pompeii moment where all of them are just standing on that hill watching Pompeii get buried under volcanic ash and hearing the screams of people. There's one of my least favorite episodes ever, the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, where you see people getting murdered in the streets of Paris. So, like, maybe some moments in history are best not observed.
Sure. That's true.
But yeah. But it's still a fascinating moment in history to be sure.
And like I said, it's a fixed point in time. It's literally like Pompeii. Like that is a good comparison episode. The fires of Pompeii. Because as the Doctor says to Donna, there are certain fixed points in times that you can't change. They have to happen. The Titanic is one of those.
Yeah, and the fall of the Aztecs in the Aztecs episode, and what else? The Bowie Base 1 and the Waters of Mars.
Yep.
What else? I mean, we could literally just make this into a Doctor Who episode. So
that actually would be a good episode for a month that has 5.
For what? For what?
Or when you're doing your greatest show in the galaxy for months that have 5 Mondays, that actually would be a good bonus episode, is to discuss the historical events that Doctor Who has covered.
Okay. Spoilers for next month, but I may have already had something along those lines planned.
Great mind.
So,
yeah.
Should we wrap this up?
Yeah, because I don't have anything else to offer. Anything more? I mean, there is a great book out there, which I lent to my friend. I got to get it back. It really goes into more detail about all this. It's basically a booklet, but it is definitely worth reading. But yeah, 50. Where can everybody find you?
Don't you want me to talk about the next topic?
Right.
Mine's next week.
Well, it's because sometimes you don't like to reveal what the next topic is. But if you are ready to, I would like to hear it.
How about this? You ask me first, and then I'll say if it's a spoiler or if I can reveal it.
All right. What's the topic for next week?
So remember we had a couple of weeks ago where you talked about Canadian cuisines?
We're doing Israeli cuisine?
No. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to talk about Israeli snacks.
Dude.
Because I felt like doing straight up his Israeli cuisines per se, it could get pretty controversial really, really fast, because a lot of these cuisines aren't necessarily Israeli. They were just taken from different cultures around the world that Jews brought with them to Israel, and now they're considered part of Israel.
Yep,
So, like,
I've seen your guys' pizza.
I wasn't talking about that. So, like, the falafel is an Egyptian dish originally, but it's widely associated with Israel. The shawarma came from Turkey, but it's also a widely Israeli thing. Like haraime, if you know what that is, I believe that originated from Morocco.
I don't know what harambe is, but I know what harambe is.
Hold on. You forced my hand. Mr. Sode. Anyway, so the gefilte fish, or rather kefilka fish, is also not exclusively an Israeli thing. So I figured alternatively, what we could do is something that is 100% very clearly proven originated in the state of Israel, snack foods, or rather snack food brands. Or we're going to see a lot of really cool, fun things to eat that are widely associated with the Israeli culture and not any particular culture that brought it with them to Israel.
So, I'm looking forward to that because that is something I've always been curious about, is what snacks in your side of the world look like.
Yeah, or more specifically, what they taste like. And let's just hope none of the people watching have any allergies to these.
Because we don't want that on our conscience.
So should I go do plugs first, or do you want to?
Plugs, and I'll wrap it up.
But you're the first class.
Yeah, okay. Well, all right. So you can find me on the Northern Entertainment Group with 50 on here, obviously on this show, guest starring more often than not on the Greatest Show in the Galaxy as well. You can find me on my personal Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_Saxman. You can find me on the occasional Monday and Friday over on the Hotel Network doing live watch-alongs of Raw and SmackDown. And then if you pay attention to my social medias and my buddy Dagan's social medias, at the end of next month, we're going to be launching a special wrestling project, which we might have some little help from 50 to do something. So it should be fun. Keep an eye out for that because I guarantee you it's going to be good.
Yeah, and as for me, you can find me every Thursday on this show, the Fun with Flags, and every Monday over on the Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where I talk about the greatest show in the galaxy, Doctor Who, which we talked a little about in this episode. And speaking of Doctor Who, I also have my own YouTube channel where I do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way to 2022. And a couple of weeks ago, I did do the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. As reviled as that episode is for me, I did a review on it, and that is really the only positive thing I can say about it. So go ahead and check that if you dare.
Right on. So, and also, let's just quickly bring this up, and let's quickly plug up our other friends' channels as well. Just give me a second.
I do that on Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I didn't expect anyone else to do it. But
well, I figured might as well. So yeah, definitely go check over Multiverse of Geekdom, which is Ben's, as 50 says, is Ben's legacy channel. Go check out the boys over there. Movie Lovers Unite, our good friend John. The Midnight Cinema, who's also part of Multiverse of Geekdom. 8-Town Reviews, of course, us at the Northern Entertainment Group. 50's channel, something to talk about, which has kind of it for the indeterminate future. It has gone on hiatus. It's gone dark, but there's a lot of great content on there where you'll see a lot of the people on these channels participate in, myself and 50 included. And of course, last but not least, our friend Luke over at Galaxy Geeks doing great things over there. So go check all these guys out. They do some really great work. All great people. Go support them. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us on Fun with Flags. And next week, this should be interesting, where I learn about Israeli treats. I'm looking forward to this. All right. Have a good day, folks. We'll see you next week.
Hold on.
Captain 50 going down with the ship. Have a good week, folks.